Today's Fireside Chat, the second of Climate Week in New York, will once again focus on green finance. Our discussion will explore how to scale and implement financial systems capable of delivering investment at the local city level. With over 4 million cities and 200,000 local governments worldwide, empowering these communities with the right financial tools is essential for driving sustainable growth and climate action at the grassroots level. With me today, I have Greg Wendt, based in California. He's an expert in sustainable wealth management, impact investing, and regenerative economic development. He advises individuals and organizations on strategies that drive financial growth while addressing environmental and social issues, aligning investments with sustainability and global impact goals. Welcome, Greg. You are in New York's Climate Week, and which are the focus issues that are burning for you?
The context of hundreds of events with the UN General Assembly, as you know, happening. That's what is the basis of Climate Week, is all of the innovators and change makers and people who desire a better world coming together and hosting events to articulate their particular theme or passion or project or community to gather side by side in partnership with all the community of practice around the world, trying to evolve the economic sphere.
Talk about green finance. It covers so many different perspectives and levels of society. And you've been there with the Open Future Coalition, which is one of many networks to trying to scale up the investment in the field of green finance.
Well, Open Future Coalition is a group that I have been in service to and working in side by side with for a couple of years now, and focusing on how do we evolve communities, how do we evolve economics, how do we evolve resourcing, and also to address the basic infrastructure of enterprise and project development and community development and project management and the infrastructure that is often available to larger institutions and so many nascent and small organizations around the world working on projects, NGOs, community and municipal projects, are reinventing the wheel or going through the same cycles of trying to get their needs met in terms of operations, funding, coordination, resourcing, tools, intellectual and also other kinds of tools advancing our missions. Well, why not making a backbone of shared infrastructure and providing that online and offline with the Library of Wisdom and Solutions? And then after observing, in my own work with Green Economy Think Tank, since 2008, and convening leaders, looking at the pattern that every major city on the planet addresses the very same kinds of fundamental questions: water, food, energy, housing, transportation. But each of us have different domains and, climate zones that we operate in, different geographies from desert to tropical, Nordic to equatorial.
That must be very much a different perspective, isn't it?
Addressing the same project of human development and human well-being and community in cities, right? That's a many generational project. So looking at that and how to advance the development of sustainable development and the innovation to now becoming regenerative development, and how do we finance this evolutionary wave of a new civilization model in the context of our current operating cities and institutions and frameworks, is almost like we're embedded in the system and evolving from it, in terms of sprouting new form in the ecosystem of thought.
When you talk about systems and when we talk about finance and capital, and we have so many different types of capital. It's philanthropic capital, it's pension funds, it's the city's budgets, it's crowdsourcing. It's also must be difficult for the local level to deal with that type of structure that is in place and maybe not solve the problem for us.
Well, indeed, because municipal government, whether it's in Singapore or Tanzania or Florence, California, or New York City. There's municipalities that have a set of responsibilities to fulfill with the city budgets, regional taxes from the national government or from the community, all those. That's how do we manage the capital flow of money? But from the work in permaculture and other domains of wisdom, there's 8 types of capitals in some of the frameworks, and money is only one of the many types of capital. There's natural capital and social capital, and all the things I'm sure you've talked about on your podcast. Then how do we innovate the use of financial capital?
How do we scale up?
Well,
is it a question of leadership or governance?
I think it's a question of mindset shift to see what is valuable in the relationship networks in each of the cities that we're operating in.
Do you feel that the municipalities are prepared to reach out to this type of different types of capital investors? Is the model of municipalities working on the right way, or do we need other type of structure for the municipality?
All the different types of money, from banking to loans to investments in venture capital in small businesses that are startups, to project finance of lending money to projects in a city or municipal bonds where a loan is made to a government to underwrite a bridge or a school or infrastructure of some sort, or then larger enterprises and larger business development or government funding from a regional funding. There's all these types of systems for organizing and deploying capital, but also each of those have entry points for different categories of investment, from an individual putting money into a local crowdfunding campaign or a donor to a Kickstarter, to a regional government collecting money from taxes and depositing in banks, or pension investing in vehicles. So you see all the levels of economic activity, but we also have corresponding levels of economic structures of small enterprise to municipal enterprise, private institution, public institutions, government, education, business, all the way down and up. And then we have money corresponding. So we have to evolve the way that those interact. We can't look at things only in the realm of through the lens of finance or the lens of economic development and public benefit. We have to weave these disciplines together. But I've seen over the years.
Yeah. But how do you feel? Yeah, see. But how do you feel that in the Climate Week in New York, how much influence have this type of discussion there?
I think it's been central. Many of the actors have become aware we really have to look in systemic thinking, holistic thinking, and look at all the different types of agents of change in the economy and agents of activity in economic and urban and rural development. And how do we interact in new patterns of activity and new theories of change and new models of taking the traditional economic model that focuses predominantly on the money cycle in business, profit and loss and enterprise, and the traditional school of economics that looks at things through the lens of money only as a mindset, to the other end of the spectrum of quality of life, is now starting to land here in Climate Week with all of the different enterprises looking at advancing this project of green economy that we were talking about in the mid-2000s, sustainable economy. And now the evolution is more looking at regeneration as a not mindset, but we're building on earlier iterations of our work. And there's many people talking this way now with the holistic, systemic, place-based, local innovation. And then the big question is, how do we take institutional capital? For example, Sweden and Norway and the pensions are two examples, or we've looked at the Singapore pension and California pensions. Because the fiduciaries have to manage such a large amount of capital, $1 trillion or so in Norway, about 900 billion in California. How do we move that money into the local level, into the city level, other than municipal bonds? How do we move that money in chunks that are smaller than 20 million or 50 million or 100 million, when projects sometimes don't even need more than $50,000? This is where that's one of the things that has to be rethought in the infrastructure of capital.
Let's take that with us from New York, and I will ask you as a last question then, what will you take with you from New York this week?
Thank you, Kai. I think the heartfelt recognition is that we're all in the same movement from all these insights of connecting capital, quality of life, and the planetary context of living systems, and seeing that we have to cohere approaches to build on our previous efforts. And there's a growing community of practice of, I think now millions and millions of people operating from these same principles, but innovating in new and innovative ways. So I think the gifts of what are now coming about in our global networks are recognition that since across the world in the 10,000 cities, mayors, their civil servants in all dimensions of workforce and housing and homelessness and economic and ecological situations that require new solutions that need money. So then there's many people pushing that envelope, but then it's bubbling in a collective primordial soup. And I think there's so many things that are coming about to address the challenges that the world is facing at this point.
Thank you for your insights, and bring this type of discussion further on after New York. And I think we don't have the solution yet, but we are all trying to get it out in the dialogue to try to find a little bit more of a long-term solution for the climate crisis. Thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you, Kai. I hope this was very helpful, and I appreciate your continued work with the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Fireside Chats, now in Transformers. Get connected to find out about controversial topics related to sustainability, climate change, and leadership. Welcome.